We can, yeah.
Hello? Yep, good. Right, okay, hi, that was quite an introduction. So what I'm going to do today is talk about winter wellness in general. And I don't need to introduce myself because that's just been done. So what I would say is embrace winter. And I'm a sort of person that is always outside. One of my hobbies is horses and walking and cycling and such things. So I love Billy Connolly's quote, which says there's no such thing as bad weather, only the wrong clothing. And I sort of live my day-to-day living by that. So get some fresh air daily during the winter, dress for the weather, and get active outside. Obviously outside work, if you get some exercise and get walking and embrace the winter, it's great for your circulation. And it encourages you to keep moving. When you're moving, you get warm. It increases your energy levels, and it gives you lots of vitamins like the vitamin D, which you get from sunlight. And winter sun is still good, It improves your mood, and it also burns calories. So whatever it is that you like doing, if you're more of an indoors person, then maybe start off with doing some walking. If you work outside all winter, maybe that's not as appealing, but just try and get out there and enjoy and embrace the winter months, because we get some beautiful picturesque sights in the winter when it's a bit chilly. So what do we call the right clothing? So if you're wearing something like denim, which this lady is in the winter, it's probably the worst thing to do, because if it rains, denim goes cold. So what we advise is wear natural fibres that are close to your skin. Use layers. Merino wool is particularly good, and things that wick away sweat and dry quickly, rather than, if you wear waterproof, sometimes you get a lot of sweat on the inside, which can be very uncomfortable. So just make sure you've got things that dry very quickly. And also then, if you're outside, you can make sure you've got your waterproofs with you. Gloves are very important, particularly for people that work outside. You can get gloves that are made out of neoprene, which is what dive suits are made from, so that they'll keep you warm and dry, and avoid materials that will soak up the water and freeze if it goes cold. And also footwear is very important, so something with plenty of grip on it, but is also breathable. And wear a hat. So I love my hats in the winter, keeps your head warm. It used to say that you lose about 80% of heat through your head, which is a bit of a myth, really. You lose 10%. But I think if you cover your head, you're less likely to feel cold. And then a very important, particularly in the winter months, is making sure that you keep your mind healthy. And I think that chart there is very, very busy, which is a lot like, I like it because it's sort of, a lot of people's minds are like that, aren't they? So making sure that you've got enough sleep and it's regulated. We'll talk a little bit more about sleep in a minute. Try and get exercise regularly. So what they recommend is about 20 minutes to 30 minutes for at least 4 times a week. Sometimes people who have very busy work lives, which are manual, the last thing they want to do is go out and do exercise. But exercise doesn't always have to be full on physical. It can just be something you enjoy. And take time to feel a bit of love for yourself, a bit of me time. So we're all so busy with families and work and looking after ill relatives and doing errands for other people and work, and sometimes I think we forget to give ourselves a little bit of space and time for ourselves. And then we've got the playtime, so it's very important that we socialise and have a work-life balance, and try and meet friends. It's very easy as you get older to especially during the COVID months, where we've, got very used to not going out and sort of become very insular. And I think now what we need to do is become more sociable with our friends again and try and meet people, because it's important. And I love the next one. With people, I try to surround myself with positive people, and there's always negative people around, and you might have family or friends that always look at things negative, and I try to flip that. So if I've got a friend who's saying negative things, I sort of challenge that and try and turn it into a positive. I think to have a healthy mind, you really got to try and look at thought patterns and try and think, are you the sort of person that always sees things half empty, or are you always trying to be positive? And who's around you? Are the people around you positive thinkers? Because if you're only getting negative thought patterns, and you turn on the news, and let's face it, there's a lots of negativity coming from the news, and then you're with people that are also negative, it can have a detrimental effect on your mind and healthy mind. Have a look through your diary and try and book things in your diary that you're looking forward to, that are exciting, and that could be going to the theatre or just meeting up with a friend. But don't just, we should be living in the moment and enjoying what we're doing, but also if we've got something to look forward to, that's really good for a healthy mind. And diet is essential as well for keeping the mind healthy. It always improves both physical and mental well-being. And if you are suffering from mental health, or you are feeling down and you don't feel that have got a healthy mind, then know where to seek help. Some employers have employee-assisted programs, which are quite good. It might be seeking help from a friend. It might be going through a sort of structured approach from the doctors or counselling. But don't just suffer from yourself on it alone. And then we've got sleep. Sleep is so important, and I think sometimes we might go to bed for a certain amount of time, but are we actually getting quality sleep? And I think that's what we need to look at, because you can't have a healthy body and you can't have a healthy mind unless you're getting enough sleep. So the things that might help you to sleep is getting exercise in the day, but not just before you go to sleep, because what you need to do is, as you're preparing for bedtime, you need to quieten your mind. A lot of people are guilty of, they might watch the 10 o'clock news, or they might scroll through their phones looking at Facebook or looking at social media, looking at things that will make their minds active just before they go to sleep, and that's not good practice, because what we should be doing is taking a little bit of relaxation just before we go to sleep, so that when you go to sleep, that your mind is actually peaceful, rather than spending the first half an hour of thinking of things that you've got to do the next day, or thinking about world problems and that sort of thing. So if you find difficulty going to sleep, then there's lots of things you can do to help. You can get sleep apps. You can have a healthy warm drink, maybe a little snack before you go to bed, so that your body isn't waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning hungry. But trying to avoid caffeine, particularly just before you go to bed. Make sure that you're not drinking like 14 cups of coffee in the day. And alcohol. Alcohol's an interesting one, because alcohol will make you go sleep very quickly, it make you drowsy, but then you usually wake up in the early hours, and quite often, particularly as people get older, they'll experience palpitations at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and they think they're having a heart episode or heart attack, or there's something wrong with their heart. And quite often it's just because they've drank a lot of alcohol, or because they've been drinking coffee all day the day before. Sunlight and exercise are really good for assisting quality sleep, and things like calamine tea, but also, maybe a little bit of a milky drink before you go to bed. It's not a myth that, a drink of Ovaltine or a drink of Horlicks before you go to bed will help you to sleep better and prevent you from waking. And when you go into bed, maybe just, if you are the sort of person that thinks about things, just try and empty the mind. Food and drink in the winter. I'm the sort of person that eats more in the winter, therefore I put on weight, and that's quite a natural thing for people to want to do. I tend to eat salads in the summer and comfort foods in the winter, so just be mindful of what your patterns are. There's lots of things you can do to make your food healthy in the winter. You can make stews and curries and things very healthy by cooking from scratch. Try and avoid junk food. I mean, we all like some junk food, but just keep it to a minimum. Try and have a few boundaries and rules around that, how often you're going to allow yourself to eat takeaways. Also, try to cook from scratch rather than buying bought food, because even though something looks healthy, if it's ready-made, it's usually full of hidden sugars, fats and salts. But if you can buy your own ingredients, you can actually make a big stew or a big curry or whatever it is you like, and then you can always freeze some when you know exactly what's gone in it. Look at what's going in your food. They say try to eat a rainbow, so lots of different food colours is a good way of looking at it. So superfoods, blueberries, garlic, cherries, carrots, pineapples, and also look at sort of what type of fats you're going to be eating, whether they're saturated or unsaturated. Try to do something a bit different, try to taste herbal tea or green tea. It will do two things: cut out milk and give you a new flavour, and also they're very warming. Fats in particular. So we really do need fat in our diet because it provides us with energy. It also keeps us warm in the winter. It helps us absorb certain vitamins, A, D, E, and K. It also does very important things for brain function and regulating hormones and metabolism. And also it makes our food taste magic. So fats are very important, but what we need to do is have a look at what type of fats. So we should be reducing the type of fats that are saturated, and you find those in pastry and dairy products such as cheese, processed meats, and fats like butter, lard, that type of thing. We should only have be looking at really 6% of saturated fat in our diet, and that equals about 13 grams in a 2,000 calorie diet. So for an average female, and you can work out your metabolic rate very easy. There's lots of ways of doing that on computers these days. So you put your height, your weight in, how active you are, and it will give you a metabolic rate, and it will tell you how many calories you should be having per day for regulating your weight. So if for the average female, you'd be looking at 1,500 calories. For an average male, you'd be looking at between 2,000 and 2,500. Obviously, if you're a very active person and doing a manual job, sort of like working on a construction site, that might be higher than that. So you do have to take in consideration what people are doing. But if you're looking at a 2,000 calorie diet, really you should only be looking at 13 grams of saturated fat in your diet a day. And our foods are quite well labelled these days, so you can sort of work it out. You wouldn't expect somebody to work it out every day, but just be, just do a little bit of investigation of what you're eating. Gives you an idea. It just makes you think twice if you're just about to reach for that fourth pasty of the week, it might make you think, actually, no, I think I'll have something a bit more healthy instead. But we should eat lots of polyunsaturated fats, because they contain the vital things, which are omega-3 and omega-6, and they're the ones that are very important for our hormone and metabolism, as well as brain functioning. There's been a lot of research over the last 20 years into Alzheimer's disease and other diseases affecting the brain, and it's been found that people that eat a lot of fish were less likely to develop Alzheimer's and things like that. So these type of polyunsaturated fats are found in fish, fatty fish particularly, plant-based oil, nuts and seed. And it also, by eating on polyunsaturated fats, will also help to reduce the risk of heart disease and lower your cholesterol levels. I've got a little bit on office workers. So office workers in particular, some people do a mixture these days. We've got some home workers, we've got hybrid workers, we've got some people that are working on construction sites and in offices part of the time. But the message really to stay well in the winter is don't suffocate and overheat in the office, get some fresh air. I've also been on enough construction sites that, you know, you go in the porter cabin and they've got the little heaters that are very good at heating, but they seem to sap all the air out of the porter cabin, and the only fresh air that comes is when somebody walks in through the door. Make sure that you take regular short breaks. That's like 5 minutes every hour to move around. That doesn't mean to say you have to stop working, just, you know, do something else, whether it's printing or you're using the photocopy or doing something different. Just don't sit in front of your screen. Get outside and get some fresh air, re-energize, whether that's walking up and down the stairs a couple of times or going for a walk, taking a short walk or going for a walk at lunchtime. All very helpful rather than sitting in front of your computer screen. It's also very good to do some stretching exercises. So if you're doing a lot of typing, you can put your fingers on the edge of the desk and stretch your hands back. You can stretch up, roll your shoulders, twist your body from side to side slowly, lean back over the back of the chair, because static posture is really bad for you. So what happens if you're static for too long is your muscles will become starved of oxygen and therefore starved of the nutrients that they need, and then you start getting fibrous muscles and stiffness. A lot of the time when people are sitting in an office at a workstation, they'll get stiffness across the shoulders and arm pain, mainly because they're static. Also, you can do a little thing called palms up. So if you're sitting at an office desk at the moment, just turn your palms up. And what happens is you'll notice that when you put your palms up, it will make your back straighter and put your back in a good curvature, as it should be. And I quite like that one. So when I'm slouching, I just think palms up and just sit up. Also, what you need to do when you're in the office is make sure that you don't get dehydrated. So always have a glass of water. Try and eat healthy snacks. And also very important is to check that your workstation setup is, you know, for you. So some people share desks and things. So making sure that your workstation is set up so that it's ergonomically sound for you. It's very good to do sitting and standing. So anybody that has a stand desk is that's perfect. But standing for long periods is just as bad as sitting. So just a change of position is the best thing to recommend. Also in the workplace, you know, you might decide that you want to do something to get people active in the workplace and engage people. And you could set workplace challenges. So Couch to 5K is obviously a very common one. You could do a step challenge. I went to a company recently and we wanted to, there was a lot of people getting back problems. And one of the things for that is that, you know, the core strengthening. So people were getting back problems and they didn't have any core strengthening. So we decided to have awareness on how to look after your back and core strengthening. And what we did was a plank competition at lunchtime where everybody got really engaged with it, and who could do the longest plank. If people, I'm assuming people know what a plank is, but it's an exercise where you're sort of on a mat with your elbows supporting your body and your tips of your toes to with your body off the ground. And usually people can, I mean, I can only manage about 30 seconds, but some people that are very strong in their core can go for 5 minutes. And that's the sort of workplace challenges that you might think of getting your workers engaged with. I think this is an interesting one. Do we work at home or do we live at work? And I think since COVID came out and people went home to work, I think people started living at work rather than working at home. And I think we need to be very mindful of this. So at home, again, have the, have the workstation setups at home been considered? I think most companies are a little bit behind the curve with this because everybody was sent home in a rush. And I know even our company, we've got some hybrid workers, some home workers. And what we're looking at now is doing workstation assessments in people's homes just to make sure that they're not going to be getting musculoskeletal long-term problems because of their working practices. And as you can see, there's a lady sitting on the settee with her legs underneath her with a laptop, which is probably okay for 5 minutes. But if somebody was doing that for 40 hours a week, it's going to cause some major problems. And again, the same things apply. Get outside, even though it's winter. Don't suffocate your office area at home by get some fresh air, open windows, take short breaks, get some exercise, do some stretching exercises, do the palms up, drink water. So all the rest still applies. And maybe, during the winter, you might set people a wellness challenge, such as the Couch to 5K, which will get people outside, or a steps challenge. So then we move on. So how do you avoid seasonal illnesses? Well, I think this year is a difficult year because COVID-19 looks very similar to flu. And I know in the last week I've been suffering from a cold and I keep thinking, have I got COVID? So then I test and no, it's not COVID, it's just a cold. But a lot of the symptoms are very, very similar. So on the screen here, we've just got a comparison. So flu, you can usually develop symptoms from 1 to 4 days after exposure. For COVID-19, it's usually 4 to 6 days, but it can be anything up to 14 days. The cause of flu is a influenza virus, and the cause of COVID-19 is the SARS-CoV-2 virus. And they both look very similar, and they're both transmitted by respiratory droplets from an infected person. And you can't tell who's infected. And the person might not know they're infected either. So in the first few days before somebody actually develops the symptoms, they might have a very low viral load, and that's why they don't know. And then it's only between 4 and 6 days later, they will gain the symptoms, which will be the fever, the cough, fatigue, which are both symptoms of flu and COVID-19. So there's been a big push this year to try and get people to have the flu vaccine. So if you've had the flu vaccine, at least if you've had the flu vaccine and you get symptoms, you might think, well, is it COVID-19? But the other problem is as well, is it if you get flu, you can still get COVID-19 at the same time. And the worry from the public health is that if you get both, that's the people that might become very, very poorly. So the things that are very common in the winter are colds and sore throats. So try and stay healthy by the things that we've talked about already. Diet, making sure that you've got enough vitamins, making sure you've got hydrated, that you've had enough sleep, that your sleep is good quality sleep. Also, I think we've all become a lot better at washing our hands before and after we go shopping, before we touch things. But also, in the home, making sure you wash your hands regularly, dispose of any tissues. We've all got hand gels at the moment, so that's good. You can always, if you start with a sore throat, you can gargle with something like salt water if you have symptoms, making sure you don't swallow it. The flu is predicted to be worse in 2021, and that's mainly because we've all got lower immunity because we've been in lockdown for so long that once we start mixing again, there was a risk that the flu will be more virulent because it's got, it can attack the immunity system. Plus, usually what happens is that we have a very good idea of what flu's coming the next year because we look at the other side of the world. We look at what Australia's got going on in our summer, and then we can predict what might be coming, and that's how the flu vaccines are made. This year, there's 4 viruses in the flu vaccine, which they've tried to predict, and we won't know whether that's accurate until later on in the year. COVID-19 is still around. Yesterday, there was now 50,000 cases, which has gone up in the last couple of weeks from 34,000 to 50. Luckily, the people that are vaccinated a lot of people are just getting cold symptoms rather than actually getting the full-blown COVID, but we're still getting a lot of people who have not been vaccinated are the ones that are ending up in intensive care very poorly, and our hospitals are filling up. So just be very mindful, continue with social distancing, even with friends and family. Wear a mask if you can when you're in big groups of people. I still wear one in the supermarket, although you don't have to anymore. I tend to still wear one when I go in a restaurant until I'm sitting down, because I don't really feel like that's a hardship to me. And wearing a mask protects other people. It's not so much for protecting yourself. Just talking a little bit more about avoiding seasonal illnesses. Anybody with asthma might notice a flare-up of asthma in the winter. This is usually triggered by the cold air. So you can do things like wear a scarf loosely, take inhalers as prescribed. For asthmatics who are prescribed inhalers, sometimes if they feel like they're getting a bit of a cold, they can up their dosage of their inhalers, as long as their nurse practitioners or GPs agree with that. There's also more of a risk of angina and heart attacks in the winter because of the cold air again, and somebody wearing a scarf loose around the mouth, if they know that they suffer from angina, can sort of prevent a trigger from that. Joint pains are always worse in the winter. We always feel it more when it's damp and cold. So again, it's very important that people who have arthritis wear the right type of clothing, so they're not wearing clothing that becomes wet and stays cold on them. Make sure that if you do have arthritis, you suffer from joint pain, get regular exercise. Yoga and things like that can be really good for it. Strengthening exercises for the muscles around the joint, and even taking something like cod liver oil capsules can be really helpful. And the next seasonal illness in the winter is norovirus, which is the winter vomiting bug. So again, you don't really know when you get in contact with that, because we've become a lot better at our hand hygiene. I know in my office we still clean all the touch points of door handles, like switches, with Dettol every morning. So if we carry on doing things like that and using hand gel, we might see less norovirus this year, because it is usually from touch. So if we can just continue with the hand washing, and if anybody does get norovirus, then making sure that they isolate, so that we don't infect lots of other people. Another seasonal illness can be people that suffer from cold hands and feet. If we have people that suffer from Raynaud's phenomenon or vibration white finger, it's always worse in the winter. And when they have rewarming, it can be very, very painful. And they also have problems, doing their job or with fine dexterity. So it's vital that they have the correct gloves for the winter. Like I say, neoprene is very good because it keeps hands warm. Looking at whether they have to put their hands in cold water and that sort of thing, which will make it worse. You can get gloves these days that have got warming, like little radiators in them if somebody's got severe, or double layering. And for the people that suffer from Raynaud's or vibration white finger, avoiding smoking and alcohol intake is also vital, because that affects circulation. And then anybody that works outside is always at risk of dry and cracked fingers. So it's, again, rather than waiting till they're dry and cracked, it's actually developing a skin prevention rather than waiting till there's a problem. So developing a pattern of moisturizing, using barrier creams, wearing appropriate gloves, which might change throughout the day depending on what people are doing, and making sure that the PPE is appropriate. And then a seasonal affective disorder known as SAD. This is a strange phenomena that can happen usually in September and October, and people can feel that once the dark nights set in, they can feel low in mood, lacking of energy, they crave carbs. I think I've got this, actually. I always like my comfort food in the winter, and when it comes September, October time, I notice that my mood dips a little bit. So I'm now mindful of it, so now I can do something about it. So I just make sure that I have a few more earlier nights, make sure that I don't overeat, make sure that I do something positive to keep my spirits up. And usually by February time it's gone, and I'm then looking forward to summer. But for people that suffer from seasonal affective disorder, it can be quite severe. It can, cause depression, and it's sometimes known as the winter blues as well. So if anybody feels that they are suffering from this, it is actually a real thing, and there is help that they can get from the GP, or talk to somebody about it to see how that they can self-manage it, because there's no medication for it. It is all to do with recognizing it, knowing what it is, understanding it, and then knowing it's not a permanent thing and just seeing it through. So self-help. So people, if they feel like they're suffering from seasonal affective disorder, the first thing is to be aware, and also getting lots of natural sunlight is very, very good for people that feel this way. So it's even more important to get out and about when in the daylight. Some people will take a winter sunshine holiday, which can be really helpful and beneficial. Making sure that they tell family and friends as well, because then if people are coming across in low mood, the family and friends won't understand what's going on. So if they tell the family and friends, then they will understand it better. Also informing HR, because then, you know, if somebody's mood changes at work, then HR can sort of, you know, inform the managers that they do have a real issue when it becomes winter. And it's not just them being grumpy. The person can also make exciting plans for the future for springtime, so they've got something to look forward to. But the main thing is being aware of it. And this lady in the picture here suffers from seasonal affective disorder so badly that what's been prescribed for her is light therapy, and this is very effective for people that suffer from this condition. So they have it's like a special type of light, and it allows 10,000 lux for 45 minutes daily, and it's prescribed. And these lights are usually prescribed by a doctor. But I do have to say that sometimes this is not recognised very well, and there could be more awareness about it. And some people do have to have medication, but that's usually in the form of antidepressants. So if we can get people having a light therapy with a light box, then it's much better than them going down the antidepressant route. And then safety in the winter. So, you know, we all drive in the winter months on the roads, and safety is paramount. So really doing those extra checks on your car, making sure that your tyres have enough tread on, that you've got your washer fluid ready, so you're not on the motorway and it runs out of fluid and you're trying to open your window and spraying your bottle of water on the window screen. You can tell I've done that, can't you? And making sure that your car gets serviced regularly. There's lots of things that usually go on in the winter that involve sort of Christmas parties, New Year's parties. People get together, maybe, you know, alcohol's there, so just making sure that people don't drink and drive, and be aware of what's happening with the weather the next day. You know, if you've got a journey to make, allowing extra time for that journey, deciding you know, your own safety. If you believe that it's unsafe to drive, then, you know, then making sure that you're informing your employer of the weather conditions as early as possible. So if you've got to be somewhere, somebody can notify somebody. And when you're on the road, being aware of whether there's extra water layers on the road, whether it's icy, whether it's foggy, and just change your driving in accordance to that. In the car, being prepared, extra food, shovel, sign, first aid kit, blankets and warm clothing are all a good idea if you've got a long journey to make, particularly to places that you know are cold spots, shall we say, for traffic jams and that sort of thing. Also making sure that your phone is fully charged, and when you're in the car, so that if you need to call because you've got a breakdown or an accident or you need to use it, then you've got that there for you. And then I love this. So safety in the winter, a massive risk of slips, trips and falls. So making sure that you've got suitable footwear on. I love walk like a penguin. So when it gets cold and icy on the path, you waddle on. Keep your toes pointed outy. Keep your knees all loosely goosely. Waddle on. Keep your hands outside your pockets. Take short steps so you won't rock it. Waddle on. Take it slowly. Holy moly, and you won't fall down. Roly. Waddle on. So I've stolen that because I quite liked it. But, you know, making sure that paths are gritted with sand. Cat litter can do the same thing, or salt. Clear snow paths. Protect bone health. So that's another one. So people over the age of 55, their calcium depletes, particularly in ladies who have gone through the menopause. Their bone health isn't as good, so looking at whether they need to have calcium supplements, making sure that they have plenty of dairy products in their diet to keep their bone health good. And if there are wet patches due to ice melting or rain, then looking at whether floors need to be dried or signage needs to be put out. Acorn Occupational Health is our company. We do offer the flu vaccinations. We do lots of health promotion during the winter and summer, so we can tailor any health promotion to your needs. We can provide wellbeing packages. We can do workstation assessments for your home workers or your office workers or your hybrid workers. We can provide ergonomic interventions, resilience training, which is usually aimed at managers, how to recognise people that are suffering from stress, how to recognise stress in yourself, how to manage that. Medical assessments we can do, which includes health surveillance. So it's very important now that we're coming out of COVID that we're getting back to doing the health surveillance. I know that the HSE are now out there looking at what health surveillance has been completed. We're looking at getting back to normal with health surveillance, whether that be hearing tests, skin, spirometry we're doing now, which is the breathing test. We're doing those as long as the risk assessments are okay, because we've been limited on who we could do that up until this time because of the aerosol generating and the COVID risk. We're back to doing fit for task medicals, and we've always been doing safety critical medicals anyway. And then we've got our sickness absence management. So we have a special team for sickness absence management. So if you've got somebody off sick, we can help you with the questions that you want answering about whether the person is going to be fit to do the job, how long it's going to take to get back to work, to working normally, or whether they need to have permanent work restrictions or work adjustments. And that is it. Any questions? I'll put you back to the Zoom panel.
No questions in the chat. Has anyone got any questions to ask? You can take yourself off mute.
Hi, I don't mind to start.
Hi.
Hi, everyone. It's Nico here. I'm in Zurich in Hitachi. Listen, I wanted to ask you to explain a bit more about the syndrome in winter, what we can do about it. So I know, for example, people that had fixed hours, so from 9 to 5 or whatever, suffered much more than people that maybe have a, how you call it, a flexi time where they can accommodate their time. Is there any advice regarding that? Thank you.
Is this for the winter?
SAD, sorry.
All right, yeah, okay. Well, the thing is, if people are working nights, then they're less likely to have any exposure to sort of sunlight, so they can be affected worse. But if they work nights all year round, then it might not make any difference to them. Do you know what I mean? So the first thing to do is awareness. And if people are aware that what they've got, then I would say that the main treatment would be to have the light therapy. And if they're having the light therapy, then it usually makes a big difference to their well-being. As for fixed hours, I suppose it also depends on whether they are working indoors or outdoors. If they're working outdoors in the daytime, that's going to be beneficial, isn't it? If they're office-based, then they're going to be not getting any sunlight. But I think as a recommendation from an occupational health nurse, I would not be recommending any fixed hours. But what I would be recommending is that the person gets some sort of natural light and gets, if they're limited on the natural light, then when they're on their days off from work, that they get more natural light, and I would be advising them to look into the light therapy. Has that answered your question?
I think it does. Yeah, I'm thinking mostly of people that is stuck in reception or they have fixed hours and it's very difficult for them, you know. I know we change the time, but they leave their house and it's nighttime or there is no light, and then they arrive to the office. Yeah, they have windows, etc. But yeah, it can be difficult to manage that.
It is, but I suppose the other thing is, realistically, people need to go to work, don't they? So the hours of work are hours of work, aren't they? So there are lots of things that they can do, you know, if they have days off, and being aware of it and having the light therapy, because if they weren't at work, then it might cause them a lot of other problems. You know what I mean? I'm a big believer in work is good for you. So, you know, I've never actually come across a company that's maybe said, you know, go out for an hour at lunchtime and get some sunlight and work an hour extra later. Or, you know, there are things that you could do as reasonable adjustments. I suppose also, it's, first of all, it needs to be diagnosed, which it rarely is. If it's diagnosed, how severe is it and how badly is it affecting that person? And there's a lot of different sort of reasons, really. And so I would probably recommend that you accessed occupational health in your country to help you with what reasonable adjustments you could make.
Thank you.
Has anyone got any other questions? If there's no other questions, we can hand over to Ewan, who will close us out for our session.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you, Isabel. That was really informative. Some really good little tips, especially I'll take some away for myself and this. I know that was really a really good session. So I want to thank you, everyone, for attending, and also just to kind of wrap up with our next event. So our next event is on the 23rd of November at 1 till 2. And it's about the practical approaches to water safety. This session will go through how to write the design stage or not, or how to actually do it through the correct appropriate records or when it's actually in place, and how we can highlight the effects and practical approaches to water safety. And this will be presented by Pete Tyson, the Water Hygiene Centre. So thank you all for your time. We'll wrap it up there. Really great session. Thank you all for your time, and enjoy the rest of your day and the rest of your week. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.